Welcome to episode 23 of WooWoo for the Skeptic. I'm Kim Polander, your host and curiosity advocate for the world of metaphysics. Today we're cracking into the mind of a millennial. Millennials may have garnered a reputation for self-entitlement, among other things, but they're also doing great things on our planet. My guest today is an example of that. If you're a parent who's concerned about the lack of introspection or depth in your millennial, or know of a young person who is struggling with anxiety or depression, then perhaps they'll find a special connection with my guest today. Today, I am so looking forward to speaking with Caroline McCandless. In her early 20s, Caroline spent 2 years devoted to self-healing. Her journey led to reopening and healing a lifetime of emotional wounds, including abandonment, abuse, self-sabotaging behaviors, anxiety, and a subsequent suicidal depression she climbed out of, literally. Caroline is now sharing the tools and methods she accumulated and created on her journey to self-healing via her blogs and videos. Caroline also offers intuitive emotional healing work, guided meditation instruction, and spiritual coaching. She may be in her 20s, but she is one of the oldest souls I know, and I trust her intuition implicitly. Caroline, thank you so much for being on the show, and welcome.
Hi, thank you, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so why don't you first tell the listener how you took an interest in mindfulness or your path to spirituality and intuition?
Spirituality has been part of my life forever. You know, my mother likes to tell the story of how my great-grandmother read tea leaves. So it's always been part of our family in a way, in some manner or another. But the mindfulness really came into play when I started struggling with anxiety more and more as I got older. My mom smartly would ask me, like, well, you know, what thoughts did you have that started you having this anxiety? So she would often pose questions to me that sort of made me even more introspective than I already was. So I always turned back and reflected on like my own actions and what was creating these thoughts or emotions. So it really began early on. And I think as I began to heal myself, it became even more important. I saw the power you have in your own thoughts and creating your own reality that way.
Do you mind sharing like what were some of the triggers or things that would put you into a path toward anxiety?
When I was younger, it was the unknown usually. Like I didn't like new situations, which is so funny because I know that surprises anybody that actually knows me. I would have anxiety going to new friends' houses, like spending the night. So I'd have to go there first for like a day play date before I would spend the night. So just funny things like not knowing what was coming. I think that's common maybe, but it was bad when I was little. And then as I got older, like some social anxiety, social situations or new people, which also will surprise a lot of my close friends and family. But yeah, it was mostly that growing up. And then it got better as I got older and working in more public settings, I guess.
And then I know that your intuition started very early on when you were a child. Can you maybe tell about some of your experiences so that maybe anyone listening can recognize it as well and not get too freaked out if that's happening to them?
Yeah, so I think luckily I had a mom and a family that was very supportive of my intuition. So I wasn't, defined as crazy or weird. It was accepted early on. So that made it easy to explore and kind of just acknowledge it and really embrace it as an identity. But when I was little, I would see spirits. And then it got to the point where I would be laying in bed and hearing people calling my name or spirits are, calling my name. And so that was the beginning of learning. And then I would start saying, I would get channeled and say things that I wouldn't remember, and then they would come true. I mean, and that was all before the time I was 10. So, and then I began exploring it more as a teenager, strayed away from it in my late teens. And then I kind of fell back on it as a coping mechanism as I was trying to heal myself.
So can you explain a little bit about what you mean by being channeled? Like, what is that? People hear the word channeling all the time, I'm sure, but can you explain a little bit more how that would play out?
Right. So the way I understand channeling, and I'm sure there's a million definitions out there, but so you become a vessel in a way for energy to come through you. So a lot of healers tend to do this. They don't realize they're actually channeling, healing energy but you kind of become a vessel. You're a conduit for energy that's more than yourself. So sometimes people will have spirits come through them and speak through them. Some people are capable of doing that. That's usually called mediumship. Other people, like healers, have healing energy run through them. And for me, it's just more of information, like just tapping into the universal source energy and just getting information that way. So intuitiveness, I guess you would define it as.
So you'd be speaking, like as a child, you would be speaking, but it wasn't actually you speaking, and that's why you didn't remember it?
No, it was me. It just, that's a good question.
The people, friends who I know who do channel, they always record it because when they're channeling, they a lot of times don't pick up what they're saying because they're kind of in that zone. So
it's kind of like your conscious mind steps out is what it feels like. So you're not really filtering through your conscious mind. It's just, if that makes sense, you're not filtering, like your conscious mind isn't really present. So you're kind of stepped back. That's why people who have less, this is going to get so much further, but people who have less ego, or they tend to be able to channel more clearly because they can step their conscious mind back and they're closer to their highest self. That's a lot of terminology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though, where, you know, your left brain or your ego might take over, like, oh, what am I saying? How does it sound? And then if you can just step back from that, yeah, I can see how it'd be better.
And it's usually why children tend to be more intuitive, because they haven't developed all of these things yet, you know, so they tend to pick up on energies more. They don't filter what they say necessarily. They don't filter their emotions. They're not trying to make it right or wrong. They're just feeling and they're just being. And so that's why they tend to be able to pick up on energies more. At least that's my interpretation. That's what I understand from it. But that's why they're more sensitive to these things. And then most of us tend to grow out of it as we get older, because all of these things like the ego and the conscious mind and self-regulating our behaviors and needing to fit in kind of develops more as we get older.
What advice would you have for parents or maybe even teenagers who might eventually listen to this, who are having experiences like this, like seeing spirits or hearing them, or having this really weird, accurate intuition and being labeled weird or strange, and parents not knowing how to best guide their child? What advice would you have for them?
The first thing is it doesn't have to be scary. I know it's very scary, especially when you're little and you're sitting in bed and you hear these voices and you know they're not in your head, but you can't quite explain them. And when you also don't want to sound crazy to, you know, the everyday person who's not exposed to this. But most people, it's interesting, once you start talking to them, they have had some sort of ghost experience or something. So it's a lot more common. And if people start talking about it more, it's interesting how open and accepting a lot of people are. And if that conversation begins, it's usually because it's a safe space. But the first thing I would say is, it doesn't have to be scary. You have more power than you think. If you do feel a ghost or a spirit or something around you that makes you uncomfortable, you just firmly can tell it to go away, to leave your space. Only things from the light are allowed in your space. And just the universal law is it has to go. So you have more power than you think. It doesn't have to be scary. I would recommend something like amethyst, the crystal amethyst. That always made me feel safer when I was little. And even still, if I have a icky feeling, I'll like put my amethyst bracelet on. Or if I'm sleeping and I feel something, like I'm sleeping at someone else's house when I used to house sit for different family members, and I would feel something in the house and I would, you know, make it go away by telling it to leave. And then I would put my amethyst bracelet on just to keep me safe sleeping. So those are a couple ones.
Yeah, I love the suggestion of crystals, because I started putting crystals near my nightstand a few years ago. And it really helped my sleep with nightmares and things like that. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. Especially like an amethyst or a black crystal like shungite can definitely filter any energy around you. So that's always good. And I think also just parents educating themselves, finding people who are open to this to educate them, so it doesn't have to be scary or so foreign. You know, once you understand something or you know something or you make it more personal, it's easier to accept and learn. So I think that's a big thing.
So I found your blogs very insightful, and they're so relatable because of how openly you've talked about your experiences and your healing process. So would you mind sharing a little bit more about your own journey, like especially with anxiety and depression? You mentioned that you were suicidal a few years back, and I'm sure many people would be able to relate to your story. So anything that you feel comfortable sharing with others?
Yeah. I mean, like I've said on my blog, MakingOm, I had a little bit of a chaotic early childhood. And so I think I learned anxiety early on. Like they took me to the doctor when I was 7 to get my stomach checked out because I had so much anxiety that my stomach was always messed up, but it was actually stress as a 7-year-old, and that's very abnormal. So just things like that. I learned this, just a little bit of a chaotic upbringing. And then anxiety was the biggest thing that I dealt with, to the point where I was getting panic attacks in high school and would pass out. Yeah, so it was bad. And then, so dealing with anxiety was a big one. And then, having some instances of abuse, and I engaged in my own self-numbing behaviors. I think coming from a family of addicts, it was something that was an easy coping mechanism to understand and to embrace. That was something I had to learn, kind of explore and learn to get away from once I decided that it wasn't who I wanted to be and how I wanted to live my life, and to continue this kind of family inheritance almost. And then, and then everything kind of came to a head a couple years ago where it just was too much. I had some repressed memories come up from when I was little that just literally turned my world upside down. And that was it. And like, so the depressive lulls that I had had before that, it was unlike any depression that I'd had before, like being sad for a couple weeks at a time or like a month, and, you're sad and it's depressive, but this was a whole nother layer. Like I'd never wanted to check out of life before. And so kind of dealing with that. And I still, like, even like in my blog and I have a post MakingOm, or my own MakingOm, which explains the story basically. I don't know what got me out of bed after a couple of days of being in bed. I still don't know, but I just kept hearing, I have to get up. I have to get up. And then my agreement with myself was, if I choose to stay here in life, I'm going to help other people heal and really live and not have a mediocre life if I'm going to be here. Because the way I was feeling at the time, it didn't seem worth it to be here for anything less than helping heal. So yeah, this blog and doing the healing work is really what I'm here for. Yeah, and it's why I stayed. So that's kind of everything in a small snippet.
So for people who are suffering from debilitating depression, where they can't get out of bed for a few days or even a week, if they're not getting that voice in the head of saying you need to get up and get out and go on a hike or something, are there baby steps that they can take to try to start the healing process on their own?
Yeah, so I've tried to explore this because I think depression is interesting because it's so widely diagnosed in Western medicine. And I feel like, and especially with medication, I'm not sure, like for me, that I never took medication, so I don't know, but I feel like that's not the end all be all. I feel like there's other ways to get to the original wound. And I think, because now to be honest, I haven't been depressed. Gosh, I don't know. It's been probably close to 2 years. And before that it was regular, it was consistent. So it's completely possible to self-heal. I think a big part is committing to yourself, committing to your emotional health, and doing that by taking baby steps. The most recent post I have is about journaling and how journaling can be used as a healthy way to release your emotions and also kind of do some internal examination. So that was a huge thing for me in my own healing of my depression. And it was interesting because once I realized the things that I was carrying from my past that I kept bringing up in my own mind to make myself sad, because sadness becomes comfortable, even though it's sad and, oh, we shouldn't feel sad, but there is some sort of comfort to it because you're used to feeling that way, or you feel like you should feel that way all the time, because you're used to it, or somebody told you you're depressed, so you should feel depressed. So I was kind of creating this depression in my mind, and the anxiety too from the thoughts, whatever I was thinking. So just sort of being able to flesh that out in journaling practices and also in meditation, to kind of like NLP practices to either clear out the energy or cut cords with certain people, or just really empower myself through these meditations and these visualizations. And that's what pulled me out of my depression. And then what I've been told, like what I've been channeled and stuff is that something like mentally and physically challenging, like small little victories. So like me in my blog post that I explained, I did this hike and it was a small victory, but it was enough to kind of get my dopamine going again and also to feel good about myself again, to feel like I wanted to get out of the hole. So small little victories, whether it's, okay, I got, fresh clothes on today, or, okay, I'm going to walk from here to wherever. But small victories end up making a lot.
Yeah, I love that advice. You talked about crystals for protection. Were there any crystals that helped you with anxiety and depression?
I don't know if the anxiety for sure, especially when I was little, I was just drawn to tiger's eye and amethyst. Both are protection. Amethyst more so for spiritual protection and tiger's eye more so for physical. But those, I was obsessed when I was little, like I couldn't get enough. And now more so when I'm feeling anxious, I have a big round, like a big heavy jasper that I'll sit with. And it's really heavy, really grounding. So that like sucks me down immediately. Or fire agate's great. One of my spiritual mentors, she told me about fire agate, so I'll use that occasionally. But citrine's good for happiness, especially if you put it on your solar plexus. Yeah, crystals I use in and out. I'll go in and out of periods using them.
Yeah, just kind of depending on the internal guidance you get.
Yeah, to be honest, I prefer, if I was now where I am now, I would prefer to use one of the crystal singing bowls to adjust my mood, just because right now I'm like pretty into the sound therapy, and just the vibrations that the singing bowls give out just really helps me and really just clears my energy.
Yeah, I'm going to be interviewing someone on sound healing. And so could you just touch a little bit on kind of the idea behind sound healing and vibrations?
Yeah, I am by no means an expert, but from what I understand is everything's energy, everything vibrates at a certain energy. And so the crystal bowls vibrate, especially because they're made out of crushed crystal that's formed into the shape of a bowl. And then the sound that it gives out is a certain vibration. So everything around it will match that vibration. That's what I understand. This person could is much more of an expert, so please let them clarify. But yeah, so it helps raise up the vibration to match whatever is singing out. So that's why certain music is better than others, right? Like you feel happier listening to certain music than you do other music. So same kind of idea there.
Oh, right. Yeah. So your body just kind of attunes to it then. Well, I love that you're offering guidance and tools for healing work. So if we could, let's just talk a little bit about Energy 101. I guess we can start with chakras. How would you describe chakras?
Yeah, so I briefly touch on those in one of my first posts. To me, chakras are they're the energetic centers on the body. So we have 7 that are connected more to the physical body, like main chakras. There's also little minor chakras that most people don't touch on and go well beyond 101. So 7 main chakras, the first one starting at the base of the body or the base of the spine. So, and it looks like a rainbow. So starting with red at the base of the spine, root chakra. This is connected to protection, survival instincts. This is like your base instincts at the root. And then going up to the sacral, which is orange, usually between like the root and like the belly button or right around the belly button area. And this is connected to passion and creativity. And, in women, it's connected to the womb. So this is creation of life. Like this is where you create and build. And then moving up to yellow, which is the solar plexus, kind of between the ribs area. Yellow connected to self-confidence, self-worth. And to me, yellow is such a happy feeling. So to me, this is kind of where like happiness comes from. And then moving up to the heart. And this is in the middle of the chest, right above the heart. How shocking. But it's green. Some people say like a little bit of pink for love, but green, this is your center of healing, center of self-love, or giving and receiving love of any kind, and forgiveness as well. So self-forgiveness, forgiveness to others. And then moving up to the throat, which is blue. This is your center of your voice, speaking your truth, honoring your boundaries, all these things that a lot of us struggle with. So throats tend to be a hard place on a lot of people. And then moving up to the third eye, which is between the eyebrows. This is a purple or like an indigo color, but this is your center of intuition. So those gut feelings. It's funny because when I do energy work, I'll actually feel my third eye like enacted. It's very interesting. And then top of the head is the crown chakra. This like opens up. To me, it looks like a white fountain opening up at the top of the head because it kind of goes out. And this is like your connection to source, basically, to divine. So all of these are interconnected, and proper circulation or proper movement like helps keep the body in line. So if one center is stifled, like I mentioned, the throat. So if the throat is having a hard time, if the throat chakra is small or diminished because this, somebody's not speaking their truth, not saying what they mean, maybe they're having a lot of throat issues, like a lot of sore throats, a lot of like tonsillitis, these kind of things, the kind of physical manifestations from this throat chakra. The other chakras are going to be affected too, because it works as like a full system. So it's good to take care of each chakra, but that's basic. I think that's basic 101. That's not too much.
So let's say you do have trouble with speaking your truth, and then that the chakra is blocked. Now you mentioned movement. So something like yoga, or what can someone do if they suspect their chakras are having issues?
Well, yeah, yoga can help. There's certain poses that open up chakras, like camel pose is actually a heart opener. So there's certain poses that do help. So it's definitely a practice. And I think if you were going to use it that way in a physical way, to do the pose and have some sort of mantra to the chakra, like something like if you're doing the heart, like with camel pose, something like, I give and receive love easily, like I give and receive forgiveness easily, something like that, that actually is a positive affirmation to get that chakra going in the right way. For the throat, if we're talking about the throat, I would recommend journaling, or even if you can't say what you need to say to this person or to whoever, writing a letter. Like that's probably my biggest homework for most of my clients. That's the easiest way to start journaling is write a letter. You don't have to send it. Don't give it to anybody. It's not for anyone else's eyes. It is just for healing processes, and writing a letter to that person and just opening that, just getting the energy out of the body, and then I think other practices for other chakras probably, but journaling to me is usually my go-to. It's easy. If you can do it by yourself, it doesn't cost anything.
Now, the phrase aura is something that gets tossed around a lot. How would you describe what an aura is?
Yeah. So to me, the aura is your combination of all of your chakras. And it's also kind of connected with like your soul energy, but it's the energy egg, because they say it's like an egg shape. It's the energy egg around you. So it extends beyond your body a certain amount of feet. I don't know the actual logistics, but it's like a bubble around you. And this is the energy that you give out. So people's aura is also the vibe you get from somebody. So if you feel really great around someone and they feel amazing and they're so great and you just love them and they have really great energy and they just have such a good vibe, like that's kind of their aura that you're feeling. That's their energy. So aura is basically, in my mind, it's exchangeable with like a person's energy or their vibe.
Now, a friend of mine recently asked me if I knew of any aura healers or aura practitioners.
I've had the aura pictures taken, which is kind of cool. Like when I was like 16, but you put your hand on a little reader thing and it takes your energy and it like overlays it on a little diagram. And yeah, and then it's your aura, which is cool. And it was really cool because when they did it for me, my grandmother actually came in, so you could see my aura becoming pink, like wrapping around like my shoulders. And then it was all pink. And then as she like retracted, like a hug, basically, the pink actually came back. And then it was back to like blues and yellows.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of cool. Yeah, really interesting. I personally, that's not my work. I don't know enough about that. I think you can break it down and do work on each chakra, and that'll affect the aura as a whole. But I don't know enough about whole aura healing. Because to me, that's just like self-healing work as well, or just energy work or Reiki. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, there's something I came across when I was searching on it, like aura soma or something. Yeah, I'll have to try to find someone to interview, I guess.
Yeah, I know. We need more info.
I know. Okay, so what are guides?
I think the most like new agey one is like people's like, this is your spirit guide, like your animal spirit guide. So, but animal spirit guides are more of animals that are good totems for people, good symbols for them to use where they are in their lives. But guides are spirits or beings or past family members or ancestral lineage that is assigned to help you in this life. So guides they can be past family members. They can be people you've never met before. They can be religious figures that you feel drawn to, especially if you were raised in a certain religion. They're just more of positive beings that are here to help you.
And everyone has specific guides assigned to them.
Yeah, everybody has guides. Exactly. Everyone has guides. These are the things like all the little good things that happen, like, oh, I missed traffic, you know what I mean? Or you're late, like you couldn't find your keys and you're running late for work and you're getting pissed and then you get on the freeway and thank God you couldn't find your keys because there was an accident that, you know, you would have been involved in had you been on time. Like those little things that happen that kind of save you, like those are your guides stepping in and kind of, you know, keeping you out of harm's way. So yeah, guides are constantly working for you. They love to be given direction. They're here to help. If you don't know what you want, then they don't know what to give you. So it's good to always be clear. But yeah, they're constantly there. Everybody has them. Everybody, I mean, usually more than one. You can have, I don't know, a whole slew, a whole gang, a whole gaggle of guides. I don't know.
So you mentioned they love being given direction. So even if someone maybe doesn't quite believe that they have guides, they should play around with it, like just like put something out there to their guides of something they want or something they're working towards.
Yeah, I mean, I ask for help constantly, to be honest. I ask for help every day. Like, oh, please make this a good day. Like, you know, please help me to have an easy day. Please help me to have gentle lessons. Yeah, I mean, I ask constantly. It's helpful. It doesn't hurt experimenting with it, even if you don't believe in it. I mean, what's the harm in asking for good things if you don't believe in guides, you know? So why not? And I think people will be pleasantly surprised at how many good things happen when you ask for good things and are clear with your intention, because it doesn't hurt. I mean, it's not like anything bad's going to happen from that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I like what you said about intention. And that was also the focus of one of your recent blogs about asking why and really getting to the intention, because intention is such a powerful force, whether you acknowledge it or not. So I encourage everyone to read your blogs because is that something you're going to be putting out weekly, the blogs, or how regularly will you be doing that?
Yeah, right now my plan is to put out full posts twice a week. Next month for January, I plan to do a month of gratitude. So I'm going to be giving prompts every day for people to write 5 things they're grateful for. So we can all start the new year with a positive mindset and like high vibrating. So people can lead the new year with this grateful intention, which will allow them to bring in the things that they want for the new year. So January will be a little different because I'll be posting every day with these prompts, but usually big full blog posts about twice a week.
Oh, nice. All right. And then I get this question a lot, and I was wondering how you would answer it. And that is, how do you recognize your own intuition? Because I think a lot of people who are new to spirituality or are curious about it think there's this big divide between someone who's psychic or intuitive and them. Like, oh, how do they get their info, so to speak? And then I really encourage people to embrace the fact that everyone is intuitive, everyone is psychic, but to just learn how to recognize that. So do you have any advice on how to develop your own intuition?
Yeah. And I agree completely that everybody is intuitive in a certain way. Like, I'm not special in my abilities. It's just that I've been developing these my whole life. You know what I mean? What I do is not unreachable for anybody else, you know? So it's entirely possible to be intuitive and to get feelings and to get gut feelings. And most of us do every day. It's just a lot of people tend to overthink it. And I think especially in America, where we're so focused on, mind over matter and just like kind of taking the logical, rational, masculine, non-emotional point of view versus the more feeling based, more feminine, a little bit of a softer way. So especially in America, I think most of us have been domesticated and trained to sort of think, no, stay rational, like, don't let your heart get involved, like make decisions based on thoughts rather than emotions. But to be honest, most of my decisions I've made, I couldn't explain to you. And like I did it because it felt right and everything turned out beautifully. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. And I would hope the same for everyone. And I think a lot of the reasons we don't trust our intuition is people are afraid of making bad decisions and they're afraid of making the mistakes and they don't trust themselves to make the right choice. And I think that also comes back to, learning self-love and self-acceptance and learning to trust yourself again, because, a lot of us feel like we have made mistakes in the past and maybe we don't know how to make good decisions now because I did this or I did this. So really, getting to that place of self-forgiveness and embracing yourself as a whole person, I think that will help too. But it's hard in the beginning to distinguish the intuition versus a logical thought. But usually, I don't know, it's like what's described as like your gut feeling. If like, I really feel like this is going to happen, or like, I really don't get a good feeling about this. Like, I feel like I shouldn't take this. I feel like I shouldn't do this job or whatever. Those are the things that you can't really explain. You don't know where it's coming from, but you can't get around it for whatever reason. Like you're having a hard time, like reasoning it away, or it's like a nudging feeling that keeps coming back to you. Like those usually are kind of your gut feelings. And I don't know for you, but for me, they kind of feel different in the body. So, but yeah, it's also practice, like a lot of practice. And if you have people that are like-minded, it's nice to be able to bounce that off of other people. Like, oh, I feel like this. And they're like, oh, I kind of feel like that too. It's good to get confirmation from like-minded people. That always helps in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. And when I was first starting out in spirituality, I started meeting people right away. So again, getting back to the intention, if that is your intention, your guides will bring you the right people who you can develop that with and go down that path. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So now let's get into the millennials.
Yeah.
How would you assess the attitude of your generation, let's say, towards spirituality, mindfulness, meditation, that sort of thing?
Yeah. And that's definitely the focus of my blog is, to sort of educate my peers, because I feel like a lot of self-help work is geared towards baby boomers and the generation after that. And there's not very much for us. So millennials, like, and I'm not a characteristic like millennial. So I have a hard time because I was off of social media for a lot of years and, did a lot of and like, I've never had an iPhone and like, I've never had an Apple product, like, these kind of weird things. So I'm definitely not the characteristic millennial, but with my peers, I feel like we want more. I feel like we want more. I feel like we want more out of life. And, we want to be able to feel and we want to be able to have emotions and be passionate and do these things. But I just get a lot of fear from my generation. Like everybody's afraid to feel their emotions. Like, I don't know if you've seen the memes or the expressions, but like, don't get the feels. And it drives me crazy because I'm like, please get the feels, like, please feel something, please. Like, it's so much better. But, like those kind of things, or like, we're afraid of commitment. And that's weird to me. Like, just jump, please. Like, we're non-committal and we're used to getting everything instantaneously. And then if we don't like it, like, oh, I'm going to drop that and do this. And like the narcissism from the social media just drives me crazy, and like that's also why I took such a long break off of social media. It didn't feel good to me. It didn't feel good to be on it all the time. And I mean, we've all seen that there's studies that show there's certain like depression and anxiety linked to longer periods on Facebook and other types of social media. So I think my generation, I think that they're more open to spirituality because it's becoming more mainstream. It's like having a crystal is more acceptable, but I feel like sometimes they're misled by certain things, like the festivals. Like, to me, that's not my kind of spirituality.
Like the Burning Man.
Yeah, like the Burning Man. Like, I'm sure there is a spiritual, opening sensation to it, and I'm sure there is like a sense of oneness there, but that's entirely possible to create that in your everyday life. You don't have to go outside of yourself. I think there's a lot of this idea that you have to go outside of yourself to create this sense of oneness or the sense of completion, rather than what I'm proposing is you don't have to go outside of yourself. Like that's all inside of you already. You just have to uncover the layers, like unbury the layers to find it. So I think we're more open to spirituality as a whole, just because, like I said, it's becoming more mainstream, but I feel like it's sort of like brand name spirituality. I don't know. Or like fashionistas. That's not even the right word, but like
maybe more superficial spirituality.
Yeah, like designer spirituality, kind of like the designer dogs. You know what I mean? Like it's for looks or for show rather than for genuine emotions. I just feel like there's a lot of, because of social media, there's a tendency to be in performance mode a lot, So that's something that I would like to sort of, I don't know, work away from, because you can be entirely lovable without having to perform for people, and that's something I had to learn, but it's true. Like, you are entirely lovable without having to pretend for somebody else,
Yeah. And I love the fact that you even do a blog, because like I have a niece who I'm very close to, and she's 18, almost 19. And I roll my eyes at her life because, well, on the one hand, she's in college now and she's doing great, 4.0. On the other hand, she can't be off her phone for more than 5 seconds, and she's deep into Snapchat. And now there's this app called House Party where you can, FaceTime with 50 of your friends. Why you would want to do that, I don't know. So I look at her and I think, maybe there's an age where things are just going to kick in, kind of like it did with me later in life. And so I maintain hope. But for her, reading a blog, I don't know that a lot of younger kids would do that. And I love the fact that you're doing that, because they're so used to these 7-second vines and these little snippets of things, and you're not going to get to the deep stuff. It's like you just said, that's more designer spirituality. To get to the deep stuff, you need to read more than 3 sentences. So yeah, maybe it's a gateway into deeper spirituality, the designer spirituality. So yeah, I'll take what I can get, but.
Totally. And I think the designer, I think it serves a purpose. You know what I mean? Like usually people, I think, enter into this through something like they start seeing psychics, or they, start with crystals, or they start with essential oils. And I think those are great gateway entries into this. But I think as you start dabbling, most people realize that they're looking for more. They just don't know how to get to it necessarily. So that's what I'm trying to do, is give people the tools, because I was searching around in the dark for a long time too, and I've watched a lot of my friends explore different avenues, and it usually just ends them up in the same place because it's still superficial. And so what I've found is all the best gurus that I admire in this self-help and like spiritual healing world, they all say the same thing. It's, you have to do the work, you have to heal the wounds, like you got to reopen them, heal the wounds, do the work. And then you come to self-love and self-forgiveness. And that's the ultimate goal. And once you can love and forgive yourself, you can do it with anybody. So I think it's great to explore and to dabble. And because what resonates with me is not necessarily what's going to resonate with anyone else. But at some point, like, it might take some people longer to do this dabbling, exploring, and go to this retreat and follow this guru and do this and that and that. But everybody's going to tell you the same thing. It's about doing the emotional work. And until you're ready to do that, you can throw thousands of dollars at this person, or, buy this shirt or buy this crystal. But that's what it comes down to, And so I'm trying to give people tools to do that without having to spend their whole life savings and going to some place. So
yeah, and it's kind of like with diets, where you can spend thousands of dollars on diets and regimens, and it really comes down to what you eat and how much you exercise, and then the emotional layers below that. And so if you can just get to the emotional layers, you don't have to spend $20,000 with a spiritual guru.
Totally.
Get out a journal, and it's free, like you said. So what do you think are the biggest challenges in getting people of your age interested in spirituality, or getting them to actually go deeper into the work?
I think a lot of people are afraid, and like even not just my generation, I've seen it in people all the way up into their 60s. So I've given like readings and sessions for people are just afraid of hurting, and I get it. And like, it totally sucks to like bring up old wounds and to think about like the bad things, and, like hurting sucks and nobody wants to do it. And they don't want to do it. They're afraid that if they, go down this rabbit hole into their emotions and their inner workings of their minds, that it's going to hurt and it's going to be painful. But the thing is it's usually the fear, like the fear of this pain, of this like, or this perceived pain, that's usually way worse than what you actually dig up. And I think there's some quote that says like the man who's afraid of suffering is already suffering. So I think to me, that's the bigger block. And it's not just with my generation, it's with people in general. It's like we're kind of wired to avoid pain. And so if they think they're going to hurt by digging things up from the past or by, examining why they do certain behaviors, they're going to want to avoid it. And I get that. But it's kind of like with like any sickness, like sometimes you have to get like worse before you get better. It's like a fever, like the fever has to peak before it moves out of your body, like that kind of a thing. So, and that's definitely what happened to me in my journey. And that may not be the case for everybody. Like it may not get that bad, and I hope it doesn't, but I don't think it will for 99% of people. But there is some digging that needs to be done. And that's where that's going to be the obstacle that I see in people getting to where they want to be or becoming that person that they want to become.
Yeah. And from my own personal experience, I can really attest to the whole fear part being worse than in the actual work itself. Because once I actually had a really good crying session in, in one of the trios for the school that I did, we had little therapy sessions in our classes. It was so cathartic. Like it is, don't be afraid of crying or releasing or getting into those wounds, because it feels so good once you're through. I mean, the only way out is through. And it's just very liberating at a physical level, even. It's just. Oh,
yeah. I mean, I didn't cry really for a lot of years. And so because I was keeping everything bottled up for so long, and like I hardly cried. And if I cried, it was in private and always private. And then I started doing this work. And I think there were certain periods where I cried like nonstop for like 3 days. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, why? Like, there's something wrong. Like, am I going to like dry out of tears? Like, how does this happen? But yeah, it was super cathartic, and it felt good to release, like to finally get that out. It was everything that I'd been carrying for, 20 plus years that was finally coming out of me. And thank God. I mean, imagine carrying that into my 60s. Like, how would that manifest in the body? Like, I just can't even imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where sound healing actually has been really good for me. I love it, especially if you're the type of person who's repressed a lot of stuff in your adult life. To go through sound healing and get vibrations physically running through your body feels so good. It's like a massage. It's really good. So do you have any advice for parents who want to encourage their children to embrace mindfulness, or is that even something they should attempt to do?
Yeah, my mom had this strategy for me when I was little, and I think I think I'm introspective naturally, but I think it caused me to be more so. If I had a problem at school, like I'm in elementary school and I had a problem at school, and I would come home and, I would say like, so-and-so was being mean to me. And my mom would immediately ask me, okay, well, what did you do to make that happen? And sometimes it was nothing. Sometimes it genuinely was nothing, but sometimes, it wasn't nothing. But it made me take responsibility for my actions early on. And it also made me focus on how my actions have consequences and how I affect other people. So it made me really mindful of my behavior. And especially because I didn't, like, it got to the point, once I was older and more evolved, like I didn't want to make other people hurt. Like I didn't want to cause pain for anyone else. So it made me really mindful about looking at the consequences of my actions. And that was just a really easy step. Like being little, like that's an easy thing to do, to think about when you're little. I also read this article. I read the headline. I didn't read the full article, but I read that there's a school that is enacting a couple minutes of meditation instead of punishments. So when somebody does something wrong, they actually put the little kids in like a little meditation area so they actually reflect. And I'm sure they must give them some guide or prompt, because it'd be really hard to just go into the void with nothing when you're like 5 years old and excited. But I thought what a great way, because it helps them to calm down. It really gives them control. And I think that's a big thing too. Also, like crystals are great for little kids, like, and they usually like them anyways because the energy is so high vibrating. So that makes them mindful. It kind of, it's a good little, like we said, a gateway into spirituality for anybody. And I would recommend this, and I'm going to say it again for the 100th time, but like keeping a journal for the kids and making an agreement with the parents that that journal is a safe space, like for the child, and like really giving them the trust and the boundaries that they need. And it will allow, because there's trust, it will create a stronger bond and more respect between parent-child relationships. But yeah, I think those are all little baby things. And even like, I would encourage parents to ask their kids what they think, because the kids are probably more aware than you think, because they get these feelings and they can't tell you why, but they have them. So the kids are probably feeling things that they can't even explain. And if you just start creating an open dialogue, I think a lot of parents would be surprised with how much their kids are actually picking up on.
Yeah, I really love that advice about what did you do to do it or to cause it? Because that's an experience that I have had with my niece a lot and I've talked about this with other friends who are parents, and, the kids are never at fault. It's never their fault.
Yeah.
It's laughable at times, but also a little sad. But to get them to actually walk through the steps of how did this action affect their life, and subsequent decisions is a really good process for them to get into, because, they start out with this attitude of it's not my fault. And so they need to be guided to help develop this reasoning process of, oh, well, if I made this choice, what's a different choice I could have made?
Yeah, and that's something that makes me nervous is we don't force any young people to take responsibility. And that is upsetting to me, because by not allowing them to take responsibility, they can't take responsibility for their good stuff too. You know what I mean? They're not empowered for the good actions that they take either, because nothing that they do is their fault. Like life is happening to them. It's happening around them. So if you're going to take the bad away from them, you're taking the good too. And I think that's really unfair. And like, how do they become empowered, confident people if they can't take responsibility for anything that they do?
Good point. Yeah. Yeah. I read an article about millennials not putting up with 10-hour work days or, working 70 hours at the office, and how it was a good thing. And I thought, oh, that is a good thing. But then there's the flip side of that where, okay, they don't like a job, they're going to quit after a week. So it's kind of a balance of
absolutely
them figuring it out. So it'll be interesting to see how their generation pans out. But
yes, it will.
So what would you say to skeptics who don't believe in things like chakras or intuitive healing work, that sort of thing?
I mean, we all have moments of this. It's just that a lot of people tend to reason them away. So like in my energy post, I explain like we're picking up on energy all the time. You know what I mean? You can, let's say you walk in a room and you can tell that, the person in the room is mad. They don't even have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. They haven't moved. Maybe they're even turned away from you, but you can feel that something's off. That's energy. Like that's picking up on somebody's vibe, picking up on their energy fields. Or a lot of us have this where you're thinking about a person, or you get this, like a thought of somebody crosses your mind, and then your phone rings and it's them calling you or texting you. So that's all energy. That's all connection. And so we have these moments. The people who I wouldn't say converted, but the people who I've opened up to this just through conversations, not with any intention from me to open them up, but that all of a sudden we're talking about spirits and all that. And I don't even know how we got here, but all the people that's happened with, they've had experiences where they felt a spirit in like around, or something happened where, their mom called them as soon as they knew something bad happened, like these kind of things. They just couldn't explain them. So we do have these instances. It's just people tend to not know why, so they just logic it away. I think it's more of being open, like why take the magic out of life? You know what I mean? Because it's kind of magical, it's kind of beautiful, and it's kind of magical that everything's connected and everything's one, and that you can pick up on people's energy, and there is kind of like a magic to life. So why take the magic out of life? It's something beautiful, and it's something special, and it's being a part of it. Like, I'm very grateful that this is such a big part of my life, because I don't know how it'd be like losing like my hearing or my eyesight. Like, I don't know what I would do without it.
Do you remember, maybe it was so long ago, but do you remember what it was that convinced you that something like chakras were real or that energy healing was real?
I don't know. See, I'm like a weird case because it's like I have been this way forever.
Yeah, I was going to say
yeah,
it started so early for you.
It's funny because my friend he's been recently like opened, like I opened, but I was thinking I was like what a weird thing, because it's like one day he's living his life and everything's normal and like he thinks he understands the world in a certain way. And then next night we're talking all this stuff and like everything comes out and like I'm out of the closet. Like I'm completely open. Like this is who I am. Hello, surprise. And he sees life in a completely different way. It's like seeing life in black and white one day and then in color the next. And I was like, that's got to be the weirdest thing, like the coolest, but like also the weirdest thing. Like I can't even imagine. So I don't know.
Yeah. And it's really hard, if not impossible, to go back into the closet and just talk about things like the weather or the government or whatever. All right. Well, before I let you go, I was wondering if we could switch gears and if I could ask you a few fun questions.
Sure.
To change the pace. First of all, did you have a favorite singer or music group growing up? Like any posters hanging on your wall?
The first one that comes to mind is Aqua, just because when
I remember them.
Yeah, like Barbie girl. Hello. This is amazing. But one of my best friends and I, we would literally she had a rabbit and I had a rat as a pet. And so I'm not kidding. We would just bring them into the room and we would just jump around for like the 45 minutes that the whole CD played. So, oh yeah, it was great. So yeah, that was definitely, or like Backstreet Boys, of course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are you interested in them as adults? Like that, they've reunited for tours?
not really.
I'm always curious about the people who, are still fans, but apparently that's not you.
I mean, I'm accepting. I don't have any ill. Like I accept that this is happening, but I don't know. It's fine.
You're not going to go out and buy a ticket.
No.
All right. And then second question is, what do you like to do on your day off when you're not working?
Yeah, I usually hike, and I like to spend, when I'm not working, I'm spending as much time outside as possible. So hiking is a great way for me to do that because I still I'll usually run or get burpees in or some sort of like workout in while I'm hiking. And then depending on how long the trail is. And then I usually surf. I surf a lot. So if the weather's nice, that's what I'm doing. If the weather's not nice, I'm usually reading books. I was trying to get back through Harry Potter again because it's Christmas, like the winter season, and it feels very Harry Potter-ish to me. But
yeah.
But I did that last winter, so I went through all 7 books. So yeah, those are my normal hobbies.
Oh, nice. All right. And then lastly, what is the number one thing on your bucket list?
Right now it's to get a dog. I have serious puppy fever, and like I love animals, and I haven't been able to have a dog for a few years, and so that's the more time pressing bucket list thing.
Oh, you are such a dog person. I can see it. Yeah. That would be great.
I know. And his name will be Wasabi, and he will be adorable. So I've already seen it in my mind. I can't wait.
Yeah, I just adopted a new dog, a 9-10-month-old. So it's a lot of fun. A lot of work, but a lot of fun.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Caroline, thank you so much for talking to me. I loved the conversation. And if listeners want to contact you for a session, or you do meditation guidance and a lot of other things, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, right now, the best way is just through my blog, MakingOm. You can contact me on that, or I have a Facebook page as well. It's MakingOm, Caroline McCandless. So either of those are great avenues.
Thank you for listening to WooWoo for the Skeptic. I would love to hear about your experiences listening to the show, as well as any people you would like to hear interviewed. And if you enjoyed this episode on millennials, please subscribe in your podcast app so that you never miss an episode. And now for your moment of woo. This quote comes from one of my favorite entertainers, the brilliant Stephen Colbert, who said, "Remember, you cannot be both young and wise. Young people who pretend to be wise to the ways of the world are mostly just cynics." Cynicism masquerades as wisdom, but it is the farthest thing from it, because cynics don't learn anything. Because cynicism is a self-imposed blindness, a rejection of the world because we are afraid it will hurt or disappoint us. Cynics always say no, but saying yes begins things. Saying yes is how things grow. Saying yes leads to knowledge. Yes is for young people, so for as long as you have the strength to, say yes. Have a great week, everyone.